Conan, what is best in life? I had to start this podcast. I had to start this vlog with that intro here, exploring Conan by Monolith, the board game. Now, admittedly, I'm more than a little bit biased. I love the Conan IP. I love Aliens versus Predator. I love that IP, Colonial Marines. So naturally, if you're going to present this type of game set in those narratives, in that universe, I'm sold. I'm there. And I might be able to overlook a couple of rules differences or things that are a little bit off for the sake of narrative. So I'm going to step back and really look at Conan from the perspective of what is the experience. I'm going to do my best to not let that personal bias kind of push in there. This is a Overlord-based one versus many type game. So you're going to have various missions: rescue the princess, recover the treasure, slay the monster, recon a map on there, the usual type of sword and sorcery type missions. One player, the Overlord, the Necromancer, they're going to control all of the minions and the heroes and the monsters in the game. And they're going to do their best to stop Conan and friends. On the opposite side, each player, or multiple players, because the missions utilize 3 to 4 heroes, you're going to play Conan and friends. And we're going to go back and forth until one side wins the mission and see how things go. So from that perspective, Conan has the feel. I mean, it's a board game, but really it has the feel of a skirmish-based, high-adventure miniatures type game. It feels like I'm playing a war game on there. And is that a good? Is that a bad thing? I find it's done so well, it's in the middle. So if you're a war gamer, if you're like a hardcore war gamer, and you're like, I'm never going to play a board game, immediately you're like, hey, this is a skirmish game. This is good. This is pretty interesting. If you're a board gamer and you're like, unless you're like a Euro fanatic, if you're a board gamer and you're like, look, I'm never playing war games because there's just too many rules and too many miniatures and it's too abstract on there, you're like, hey, this is a board game. I've got resource management. I'm moving around miniatures on there. I've got a board. It kind of is a little bit of both in how it operates. What's unique about it, before we move into the narrative, is it's refreshing and it's exciting from both the Overlord perspective and the perspective of the heroes, the characters, because there's a lot of unique features that to this day, as of this podcast, as of this vlog, and we're not talking about the other iterations, the Batman Chronicles, and Monolith is now kind of releasing a rule set that will work with any type of miniature game, pulling in kind of the AI, the mechanics of Conan. Those I would include in Conan, but comparing Conan to other board games, I have not seen this elsewhere. And I have played and I enjoy many one versus many Overlord type games. I love Descent First Edition. I love Second Edition. I love Dungeon Saga on there. But Conan really brings something special to the table. Both the Overlord and Conan, you work with power gems. You literally have these gems on your character sheet. And you get to decide, you start the game with a fixed amount of gems. And then as you take actions, the gems are the currency, the units, the power of the gods. You're literally blood and steel, whatever you want to call it. And you expend gems to take an action. And then at the end of the turn, you get a certain type of refresh. So right away you have management. Do I spend all my gems now? Do I spend none? Do I use a few and kind of in the refresh phase get more and more and more for one final push? From the Overlord perspective, you have the Book of Skelos, which is this tray, and each minion, each group on the board has a tile. And as the tiles move, as you activate them, they move down the board, requiring less or more gems to activate. So it's this constant switching back and forth where it's like, hey, it's the beginning of the game. I want to activate the boss monster right now. I'm going to pay a lot of gems to do that. Or if I activate other units and the boss moves down to a slot of less gems, now I can activate. So you have a lot of choices on there. As the Overlord, it's also exciting because you have a tile that allows reinforcements, spell abilities, special abilities for the mission. So that's in play also. You're not only moving miniatures around and attacking and doing things like that, but you're looking when to play the kind of special what if in the scenario. And this really adds to the theme of it. You also get to play, and this changes by the various missions and scenarios, a boss monster, a lieutenant, someone that's powerful, someone that's commanding the minions. And it's very thematic and it's very satisfying because you're just throwing waves and waves of minions at Conan and friends, and they're just cutting through them, and you don't really care because you got tons more and you can always call in reinforcements. But having that one miniature, that one piece to epically decide, now I'm going to face off against Conan, that's where things get really exciting and really interesting. Now, this is a dice-based game, and we're going to look at Conan and Friends in a moment. This is a dice-based game. You're going to be rolling lots of dice, and it's a game of successes. You have different colored dice that have various symbols and axes on them. The more symbols and axes you get, the more stuff you can do. You can pay resources, your gem resources, to manipulate the dice. So right away, if you're like a total dice maniac like I am, you're like, hey, the more dice I can roll, the better. If you're a Eurogamer, you're like, I hate this game because I can't control the dice. Well, you can. You can pay points for a reroll, both attack and defense. Through the use of your power gems, your life gems, you can influence the results. So now this is another tactical layer. You know, if I'm the Overlord and I want to throw a bunch of minions at Conan and he's going to cut through them, then I can try and nullify his attacks by re-rolling my defense dice or spending resources to make it harder to cleave through. Likewise, I can jack up their attacks. So you have a lot of choices where and how you want to manage it. So let's look at Conan for a second and the other characters in the game. What is really unique about this system is outside of the Overlord, it's not a you go, I go system. I use Descent as a comparison because I love first edition. I love second edition. Zombicide is another great game that I love. When it's your turn to activate, it usually follows this type of script. Okay, you have 3 activation points. You can spend a point to move, you can spend a point to attack, you can spend a point to search. Or you have to move first, then you can take an action. And an action could be a spell or an attack or a search. If you don't move, then you can take your action, but you can't go back. There's some sort of like if-then-else decision tree. Conan is bonkers because you start your turn and you're playing your hero, and you've got these gems on your card, your resources. What do you want to do? Well, you can move. You can put some gems in the movement box and you can move. Then you can decide, I want to attack. You can put some attack gems in there. Then you could decide, you know what, I want to move some more. Then you can pause. And someone else on your team can move their hero and maybe attack. And then you can decide, okay, now there's an opening, so now I can move. You as a team collaborating, this is what's the amazing part of the game. There's no set turn order. There's no set flow of movement. It's, do you have the resources in terms of power gems? Then you can go and do it. But realize you're only going to recover a few a turn. So as Conan, you want to if you gas out, turn 1, that's going to put you in a lot of trouble. It is very unique because literally Conan can run up, cleave through 5, 6, 7 dudes with his battle axe. Now this leaves an opening for another character to run up because the Overlord was trying to block things. That character can now pause, maybe make a ranged attack, do a throwing knife, then activate Conan again. Then you can activate maybe a spell if you have the magic user character. Tremendous back and forth. Tremendous back and forth. We also add the idea of manipulation in the game. So dice are used for success or failure. And this makes the game even more bonkers. And I say that in a great way because now I can play Conan. It's my turn. I move up with Conan, I attack and I cleave and I break through with my axe. The next character moves up in the opening that I created, and there's, a guard dog, a wolf, a hyena over in the corner. I throw my throwing knife at it. Then Conan follows to move up, cleaves someone else, and then tosses his axe to me. Or I toss another two-handed weapon to Conan on there. You can manipulate stuff. You can jump over stuff. So there's one of the maps where you're literally in a bar, and guards are pouring in, and they're like, kill him and kill Conan. You can like go up steps. You can jump over a railing. You could hop over the bar. You can throw stuff. You can manipulate stuff. You can move. You can attack. Whatever you want to do, whatever order that you want to do it. This is like a skirmish game on steroids. This is like I'm playing D&D. D&D free combat, Dungeons & Dragons free combat, in the Conan universe on there. And again, it's all about resources. Now, when you take wounds, the Overlord doesn't really take wounds. The Overlord runs out of minions, or you get your lieutenant or your boss monster killed, and you can act with less and less, even summoning monsters and reinforcements, but you can lose the mission. When you're playing one of the heroes and you take damage, the power gems, they move to a place of no recovery. So not only are you expending these gems, but if you get hurt, you get cut, you lose them permanently. There's some healing potions, there's some armor, there are ways to mitigate it. But there's this duality of where it's like, look, you got to watch what you're spending and not go crazy, but also account for the fact maybe you want to get a couple of rerolls, or maybe you want to build in enough that if you do get hit, that it's not going to take you out of the game. And that's one of the things personally when you play Conan. He's such a beast mode, like turn 1, turn 2, you just go out and like expend all your resources and like, I just killed half the stuff on the board. And then the Overlord is like, okay, that's great. Now it's going to take you a while because you gassed out. I'm going to start piling wounds on you. It's very, very tactical. It's very, very interesting. So you have the base game. There's also a number of expansions that have you fighting with new maps and new monsters and new missions in the cold northern lands. You've got essentially ancient Egypt, the Sandlands, and then you have the Far East on there. I love the northern expansion. I say that it's almost an auto-include. If you're a fan, maybe you'll look at picking them all up. But if you're like, hey, I want to start small and compact, core plus the Northern Lands type expansion is huge. It has some giants. It has some really, really interesting missions. It kind of recreates that battle at the Dead Mound on there, even though that's not what it really is. It really kind of is. It is a lot of fun. The Egyptian expansion, the Far East, the desert, it has some big scorpions. It has some assassins. It has some unique mechanics in that you're moving up and down different aspects of the board, literally, traveling up and down wells. So it's like a lower level, a mid-level, a high level. It's a little bit too complex with, I think, how they were trying to implement things. And then the Far East one, that interpretation, I enjoy the monsters and I enjoy the scenarios the most, but the maps are a little bit limiting. They're a little bit small in terms of the zones. So tactically, it's not as flexible and it becomes more of just kind of a dice fest on there. But it is a very, very solid expansion. So the big question, of course, and there's lots of how to play videos and other videos posted on YouTube that'll give you more detail in the mechanics. From the narrative, how does it play on there? If you enjoy the Conan universe and the Conan IP, this game captures the dynamic play of it, the feel of sword and sorcery in the moment, cleaving through enemies, utilizing forbidden magics, wave and wave of just minions coming at you. It does it perfectly. It does it perfectly. It's a skirmish type war game on there. And if you're someone that likes Euros, or you have some friends that just all day they like want to count sheep and wool and ore, it is surprisingly complex with the resource management of the gems, of the items, and deciding, okay, I'm going to move here, then I'm going to pause, then you're going to move, then I'm going to toss you this, then you're going to try and activate that, or you're going to kick open the door and I'm going to move through. A lot of dynamic group play that, again, as of this podcast, I haven't seen elsewhere. And in terms of cooperative games, there's no solo for it. In terms of cooperative games, it is my number one game. If you were going to be like, Fritz, let's play an Overlord one versus many type game, your choice, boom, Conan, on there. Not just because of the IP, not just because I'm a Conan fanboy, but because the mechanics and the gameplay are so unique, it's insane. It is so well done from there. Side note, Batman Gotham Chronicles, I didn't have to buy into it because my good buddy who is a Batman maniac, he has it all. It's fully painted. We play it all the time. He doesn't have to sell me on it. I don't even have to sell him on it. It's just like I send him a text like, Batman? He's like, yeah, we're up for it. So I didn't have to pick that up for my own collection. But if he wasn't in place or he wasn't a Batman fan, I would probably pick that up too and get to enjoy that type of universe. Again, utilizing similar mechanics, a couple of additional refinements, but a shame in that it doesn't seem that mainstream. I know Monolith had kind of a unique perspective on pushing it out and publishing it, but up there in terms of board game innovations, in my opinion, 100%.